What's up, everybody? Back at you with another episode of Blood on the Razor Wire TV, where we bring it to you real and we bring it to you raw. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. I promise not to disappoint you. Make sure you leave a comment. Hit that like button. We got to get them likes jumping. You know, when Amy was over here, she was helping us get that thing moving. But today, we're going to read a book, right? People have asked me to read The Devil's Butcher Shop. So I went out, I bought the book. I've never read it, never read a chapter. I'm going to read it with you guys, and then we'll discuss it, right? Who knows? Maybe we'll put out 2 videos today. We'll see. I tell you, man, my work ethic's 100. Some people might get a little disappointed here and there, but because I got mad the other day, but it's all good, man, because what we're promoting on the channel, man, is just respect people, man. Let's give people a little bit of respect. If you think someone's lying, it's all right to call them out, because I try to call them out, too, in the videos. Like I said before, there's 3 or 4 videos that I recorded that I never put out, because I just thought the stories were just too far out there, right? But anyway, it's all good. So let's go ahead and read this book. We'll discuss it. It was one of the worst prison riots in the country. You know, in my perspective, it's a close second to Attica. I think Attica's number 1, but definitely a close second. Some gruesome things happen in this place. For months, the kites are everywhere. Notes scrawled, rumors, meetings on murmured agendas. Premonitions felt in noisy, clamorous action or in the silent eyes of caged men. It is all the furtive telegraph by which a prisoner talks to itself. As usual, the kites flow outward. The keepers in the New Mexico pen and beyond are among the first to know. But the messages move in both directions, reverberating deep into the corridors and cell blocks and the sights and sounds of official provocation and persistent, contemptuous negligence, until it will seem too many that the state officials are not merely ignoring the beast taking shape before them, but actually inviting it in. In April 1979, a guard named Bobby Runyon proposes to his superiors an organized intelligence system to replace the pen's hazardous reliance on informants and random, usually unchanneled staff reports. A former Air Force intelligence operative with a degree in criminology, Runyon sees his proposal ignored for several weeks and then, like so many other conscious guards before him, resigns in apprehension and disgust. Lacking this system, he has written in a prophetic letter to Deputy Secretary of Corrections and former warden Felix Rodriguez, I anticipate serious incidents in the near future of corruption, the introduction of contraband, escapes, riots, hostage-taking, and ruthless killings of inmates. The letter is dated July 6, 1979. A month later, 2 seemingly unconnected events give Runyon's letter added portent. In the long, cool days of the late New Mexico summer, the prison administration begins an overdue renovation of the riot-controlled grills that close off the south wing dormitories from the main corridor of the institution. The remodeling is to allow the prison control center to shut the grills electronically, swiftly sealing off the dormitories by the remote command of a few buttons. At any point, the work can be completed in several days, concludes a later inquiry, but the administration feels no sense of urgency or priority, and the new electronic controls will still not be installed by February 1980. Now, though, the grills are usually closed manually. Renovation leaves the old routine operation by key cumbersome, according to the prison officials' subsequent reports. From August, the riot control doors are simply not used. As the grills stand open, the U.S. Justice Department's Community Relations Service has begun a crucial mediation between New Mexico corrections officials and penitentiary inmates represented by attorneys of the American Civil Liberties Union. The mediation stems from a landmark constitutional suit brought by convicts against the state in 1977 to improve prison conditions, Duran versus King. Captioned for Dwight Duran, the convict who led the plaintiffs, and Bruce King, the state's current Democratic governor. After presiding indifferently over the first stages of the case, local federal judge Santiago Campos suggests mediation, and the 2 sides agree. With the state dragging its feet, the mediation takes more than a year to get started, but this August, there is genuine optimism among embittered inmates as the talks begin. The Justice Department mediators have resolved similarly volatile disputes from California units at Kent State, at Wounded Knee, and in school designation battles from Boston to Dallas. It looks like we have a chance of changing things with the feds around, one prisoner writes his mother on Labor Day. As the first chill autumn nights descend over the Cerrillos Plain, as the leaves blanch to pale yellow in the sparse trees near the administrators' houses, in the guards' trailer courts on the pen grounds, the negotiations drag on fitfully through September. Then abruptly in early October, Deputy Secretary Rodriguez takes charge of the state's case, and the federal mediators are told to leave. Their good offices no longer utilized, as a Justice Department official describes to a reporter 4 months later, after events have made the breakdown pregnant with tragedy. When Rodriguez next negotiates with inmates, there will be no Washington intermediaries, and the issues will be more stark. In early November, prison officials begin yet another renovation, this one of the locking system in cell block 5, a maximum security unit at the north end of the building, housing some of the pen's most violent men. The need for repair in cell block 5 is not unusual. Though little more than a quarter century old, the penitentiary has been shoddily built and poorly maintained, the product of original and continuing graft of one sort or another. Guards will remember especially the locks. They seem perpetually faulty. Now, because the prison is decaying, the dangerous men from 5 must be transferred. It is prescribed corrections practice in such cases to put the displaced inmates in other maximum security cells, or failing that, at least to disperse and separate them among lower security units, lest they band together in their temporary housing. But because the New Mexico prison is also overcrowded, more than 1,100 men in an institution designed to hold safely and humanely no more than 850. The remaining high security cell blocks are already beyond capacity. Almost all the men from 5 will be moved into dormitories, the least secure units in the prison. Yet, at that, they will not be dispersed. Most of them this November are sent together down the long central corridor to dormitory E2 on the second floor of the south wing. There, as renovation of their cell block proceeds at the usual leisurely pace, the new hardcore men from 5, a coalition of Chicanos and whites, soon begin to expel the dormitory's few blacks and establish their rule. They will still be in E2 beyond the open, 2 cumbersome grills, as the winter wears on. On Thanksgiving, many of the pen's inmates are served spoiled turkey, what one later described as smelling green rotten. Hundreds suffer from diarrhea after eating only the other parts of the meal. Guards and prison food administrators ridicule their angry protest. Then, a few days later, as several convicts were to remember vividly, there is the strange repetition of a recent incident. At about 5:30 in the evening, the pen is suddenly plunged into darkness, while the mess hall is still crowded with prisoners. When the lights come on minutes later, the men, through murmuring and occasionally catcalling, are still standing or sitting passively where the blackout found them. But a special contingent of guards, fully equipped with helmets, shotguns, riot clubs, and tear gas launchers, has quickly materialized in the corridor and at the entrance of the mess. The armed group is made up largely of what inmates call the goon squad. Officers allegedly involved in the frequent gang beatings of prisoners. Some of them are not assigned to the regular swing shift, staffing the penitentiary at that hour, and they have apparently been ready for the blackout. Since nothing develops in the darkness, however, helmeted officers pause awkwardly before the quiet men in the relit hall and then leave as the meal goes on. It has all happened like this once before in the last few months. Several inmates remark afterward. A sudden blackout and the instant appearance of battle-ready riot squad, although at other incidents such as fights or stabbings, it can take several minutes for a single guard to arrive on the scene. Later, there will be no record of a power failure at the penitentiary of New Mexico during those weeks. When the collective transferred the cell block 5 men to E2, the rancid turkey, and the blackout, November brings as well 2 specific warnings, both given to ranking officials and both ignored. Around November 30th, the New Mexico Penn's Director of Psychology Services, Mark Orner, goes to senior prison officials in visible alarm. Orner is a controversial figure, distrusted by some inmates, protected by others. He wields the awesome arbitrary power of release or repression with his psychological evaluations and represents a part of the convoluted world of the prison snitch system, the cultivated treachery that will soon issue in such annihilating rage. I get good information whenever there's going to be heavy shit. Orner later tells state police agents in recorded testimony. Now, in the last days of November, 4 inmates come to Orner one by one to tell him there's going to be trouble, an escape and a takeover of the institution with hostages. Perhaps Orner and some of his own staff, including women. A black, 2 whites, and a Chicano. The prisoners are not usually informers, but they have seen the kites as never before, and the black man believes he is on a hit list of those to be executed in the revolt. There will be an escape, then a riot, Orner tells administrators, a follow-up breakout. State police subsequently asked the psychologist about his warnings. No, not a follow-up breakout, he answers empathetically, but a follow-up riot, supposed to be a riot in the gym. The escape would be only the beginning, Orner goes on. They are trying to start a riot. There was going to be a riot. I heard just that a riot was going to happen. The insistent repetition in Orner's later testimony about what he knew and warned will be itself as significant as his initial report. For he will testify to the state police on his unheeded intelligence on January 7, 1980, after half of his warning has already proved rather dramatically accurate, but still before the predicted follow-up. His information will be ignored even then, however, much as it was ignored weeks earlier. He has hardly been alone in having advanced warning of the trouble, Orner recalls to the state police in his later statement. There was a bunch of people who knew about it. Among them are several guards, who tell their superiors of the specific date of the planned major escape. Within a day or two, Orner will later recount 2 meetings with correctional officials that November. At one, there were repeated reports of an impending disturbance, and Rodriguez orders that 2 of the inmates named most frequently be locked away in maximum security. But at a second session, when Orner brings a precise list of conspirators, he is ridiculed. He has come with his report of escape and riot to Deputy Warden Robert Montoya and the Superintendent of Correctional Security Manuel Carinas. As Orner hands over his list of names, Montoya pointedly lifts a paper off his desk and says, according to Orner's statement, "That is okay. I've got 12 names." But Montoya and Carinas will not act on the intelligence. "I'm not going to be in this fucking place with 20 officers on a weekend," Orner remembers telling them nervously, and they laughed. They thought it was funny. Then later, when his foreknowledge is the object of an outside investigation, Orner and others on the prison staff are told they are all one family and must be careful with what they say. What did that mean? Orner is asked, and he answers simply, keep your mouth shut. Then later, there's a group of people in the prison administration who keep all the fucking information, Orner concludes in his January testimony. While the deputy warden and security chief are laughing at Orner, yet another augury comes from the other side of the bars. Soon to be paroled, Dwight Durham, the leading plaintiff in the prison reform suit, joins another inmate, Ralph Gonzalez, in writing an extraordinary letter to his nominal opponent in the case, the state's governor, Bruce King. Unless there is immediate action to better conditions, Duran and Gonzalez warn King, the penitentiary of New Mexico faces catastrophic. Since he filed this brief in 1977, Duran's life has been a symbol of moderation, legal redress, and negotiation the raw-edged, blackly cynical cell houses of Santa Fe. But in the closing weeks of 1979, he senses that time is running out and perhaps gone. To the failure of reform, he tells the governor, there will be terrible consequences, and the situation will be soon out of control. Marked privileged legal correspondence, the Duran-Gonzalez letter disappears into the maw of penitentiary mail and state bureaucracy. Months afterward, the governor's staff cannot recall ever receiving it. In any case, though, this letter speaks with grave new urgency and authority. Bruce King has been hearing similar warnings for years during his 2 terms as chief executive. They have all had similar effect. By December, winter has begun to toy with the prisoners on the barren Cerullas plain. Days are alternately mild and biting, the nights steadily frigid. A thin snow falls, disappears, oozes back to a frozen crust on the worn empty ground around the cell blocks and dormitories. In the cold, the prison closes in on itself. Crouches, windows fogged by breath where men can reach them. Sound ricocheting sharper and farther through the wings. But this winter, outside or in, the signs of what is coming continue to gather and to be ignored. On Friday, December 7th, there is an obscure but historic gathering in Santa Fe. Ostensibly, it is a routine meeting of the parties to discuss the course of the prison reform suit, now that the Justice Department mediators have been dismissed. For the inmates come Dwight Duran and fellow plaintiffs and inmates Lonnie Duran and Sharon Towers, along with 2 ACLU attorneys representing the state are Ralph Muxlow. For For some years, the Corrections Department lawyer on the Attorney General's staff, Deputy Secretary Rodriguez, and Rodriguez's chief aide, Joanne Brown. But amid the perfunctory legal jockeying, Duran and the other convicts delivered to the state officials a somber, unmistakable warning, just as they had tried to warn the governor. The prison's going to blow, a witness remembers Duran saying. He and the others then described the mounting tension of the past weeks. But no one contradicts their view. Asks for more information, offers a tangible response. As the convicts and their lawyers part later in the courthouse hallway, someone jokes bitterly about the date. It is Pearl Harbor Day. 2 days after Duran's warning and plea, the event takes place, on schedule, with Orner and several other penitentiary staff have forecast for more than a week, and which fulfills the first of the Kite's prophecies. 11 men escaped from the New Mexico pen with apparent ease. Moments past 5 o'clock that afternoon, following the evening meal, 10 inmates gather in cell house 2. 6 are from another block, but are undetected by the lone guard supervising the area. 5 of them are convicted murderers, while an 11th convict occupies a swing shift guard captain in a conversation at the entry to the cell house. The 10 break a cell window and use a stolen saw to hack through the bars already partially cut. Within an hour, all 10 get out the hole, and using knotted sheets, stocking caps, and clothing, pull down protective concertina wire and climb to the roof of the central corridor. Across the roof, they drop a dozen feet to the ground. They make their way toward the fence along a cell block wall, just out of sight of the front tower. In the gray early nightfall, a tower guard eventually sees a portion of sheet left hanging and asks a foot patrol officer to investigate. But while the guard is finding the sheet, the escapees cross unseen a 50-yard lighted expanse of the penitentiary's front lawn and lie by the fence, once more just beyond the tower's field of vision. Incredibly, the foot patrol reports having seen the sheet, but routinely resume his rounds. The escaping men wait for the siren. None sounds. For 20 minutes, an inmate grinds on the inner perimeter fence with a pair of pliers stolen from a contractor at a prison work site. And then, through a jagged 2x3 foothole, the men are gone. Almost 90 minutes later, the 11th man ends his conversation with the guard captain, walks back into the cell house to leave by the same route, scales the roof, drops to the front yard, and then walks almost casually along the fence for what a later report calls several minutes before he finally finds the hole and disappears. It will be more than an hour after the escape before the state police are notified, nearly 3 hours until roadblocks are set up. A lot of dumb luck, one fleeing con explains the breakout later. With little evident planning for the outside, all but one of the fugitives are captured over the ensuing days and weeks. But the mass escape is more than happenstance. Not only are reports from Orner and others ignored, but a subsequent Attorney General's inquiry reveals as well that 3 of the plotters have been witnessed and reported planning the event, while another off-duty guard has received a tip and called the pen to alert officials to the escape 2 hours before it begins. Still, senior officers said to receive these reports, among the Carinas and the guard who advises Orner to keep my mouth shut, cannot remember the information. No one asks more. Only after the escape is it discovered that much of the fence line cannot be seen from the front tower, while it and other towers are commonly left with broken equipment, and even without binoculars. But administrators responsible for tower security and provisioning go unquestioned. As the Attorney General prepares in mid-January to release his inquiry into the escape, newspaper accounts report that prison officials had prior warning of the breakout. Despairing guards immediately circulate to the governor and the news media in an anonymous letter saying the reports are true, that the pen is dominated by a large clique, and the measures have to be taken or other incidents will definite occur. The letter is ignored. There's some misspelling in that letter. The Attorney General's escape report concludes that there is factionalism, poor communication, and apathy at the pen, and under current conditions, officials are playing Russian roulette with the lives of inmates, staff, and the public. California correction consultants called into the inquiry observed that the escape or something similar should have happened long before this and will no doubt be repeated if the staffing and training problem is not addressed and quickly. But despite such stark language, the report remains unaccountably vague on specific responsibility for the intelligence lapses and any other question of management beyond adding staff. In its wake, 2 young tower guards are fired, while Charles Bucknell, a black corrections secretary who has sought vainly to curb Rodriguez's power, resigns as the public scapegoat for the shocking escape. But Governor King will not ask the legislature for higher guard salaries and added prison staff, the report has so urgently recommended. Not everyone suffers from the debacle. Senior prison officials are implicitly exonerated. Rodriguez becomes acting Secretary of Corrections, the heir apparent to the position. And the Attorney General's chief investigator of the escape, the author of the published inquiry, it turns out, is a former Corrections Department staff lawyer under Rodriguez. Not long after the report, he is appointed by Governor King to fill a vacant district judgeship, a manageable embarrassment on the outside. The effect of the escape is electric inside the prison. It wreaks havoc with the always fragile facade of security by which a penitentiary staves off anarchy. The keepers have blundered, but with impunity. The scapegoats are too junior or too distant to matter. For better or for worse, the system will go on. A few days after escape, one convict later tells a television interviewer, several prisoners watch as a guard, obviously drunk, weaves through his work in charge of the control center. The holes methodically chewed in the window of a cell house, too, and the perimeter fence have returned to the convicts their most valued and volatile possession: control. At the same time, the escape also fastens the inmate population into a rapid spiral of overcrowding. Transfers to more lenient satellite institutions have been cut off in October after a stabbing at the work camp in the mountains south of Albuquerque. Now, movement out of the maximum security hell in Santa Fe is frozen indefinitely. The census climbs from 957 to 1,157 in less than 3 months, squeezing men together, pressing their faces into the stench of dirty feet in packed cells, robbing them of the last shreds of prison privacy and of transfer's last incentive for decent behavior. Without the mass escape in December, the folly and cover-up and the mood it leaves in the cell blocks and dormitories, at once bravado and despair, the New Mexico pen riot is far more difficult to imagine. As Christmas approaches, there are numerous kites brooding that hostages will be taken during the holidays. Earlier in the month, there has been talk of a seizure during a special radio broadcast from the pen by the inmate's favorite disc jockey, Mr. Hot Licks of the University of New Mexico's public station, KUNM, who plays 1950s oldies every Saturday night to accompanying dedications between the prisoners and their loved ones. Taking Hot Licks hostage will give the cons a dramatic captive, as well as an instant broadcast facility through which to air their grievances. But someone warns the administration, and the special concert is canceled, though no other precautions are taken. Another plan has it that a picked group of convicts will capture civilian and guard staff, order the rest of the inmates evacuated, and hold up the institution during a televised siege the holiday week, dramatizing their grievances to the nation. We're going to have a goddamn riot, an inmate clerk and staff officers hear Deputy Warden Montoya abruptly announce to a classification meeting in mid-December. The subordinate men around the room are stunned and say nothing. Montoya, apparently satisfied with his effect, and in any case vouchsafing no details, resumes the regular agenda. On December 20th, 5 inmate assistants are called together by one of their fellow clerks in the psychological unit and warned not to interfere if female members of the psychologist staff are taken hostage. Some of the clerks say they will resist any assault on the women. At the same meeting, according to later testimony to the state police, the clerks are told that one of the primary goals of an uprising is to open cell block 4 and kill all the snitches, and besides, any snitches that were out in population, December 20th. It is one of the first references to planned executions of the informers, a first allusion to cell block 4, the protective custody wing at the far northwest corner of the building. A riot always has been, will be, far more than a political act to expose mistreatment and wring consequences and wring concessions. For many, it is the long dreamed of chance for payback, an orgy of retribution. Murder will be no random byproduct of the chaos, but a cherished purpose, and officials know it. The threat to the informers will be duly reported and dismissed before Christmas. At year's end, 2 essential sequels will be played out. Around December 23rd, by their later account to state investigators, 2 worry guards sent Coronas a memorandum on the danger of the renovation contractor's tools being left each night unsecured in cell block 5. A hacksaw from there already has been used in the escape. Among the equipment are powerful blowtorches and even tanks of reserve fuel for them. Afterwards, Coronas will claim he never saw the memo and apparently never thought of the tools. Finally, just before New Year's Eve, another guard notices that the small blue night lights in dormitory E2 are evidently burned out, leaving the unit and its new occupants from cell block 5 in a thick nighttime darkness, almost impenetrable to corrections officers on rounds. The guard reports the bulbs out, but they will go unreplaced. The year 1980 dawns in pale blue day, the snow already heavy in the Sangria de Cristos. Santa Fe has had its posh New Year's Eve parties behind adobe walls lit by the charming traditional fires of farolitos and luminaries. Behind other walls at the penitentiary, the open grills, the political and legal neglect, the administrative negligence, the blowtorches, the burned out lights, and the men, all are already in place for what one con will call the biggest party ever held. In January, one inmate chronicler of events would remember plenty of secret meetings between the pen's racial gangs plotting their uneasy coalition in an uprising. The psychological unit clerks are now notified. The target date is January 8th. They repeat their readiness to defend the female employees, while later passing on the report to a staff psychologist, who passes it in turn to prison security. At the same time, inmates quietly begin to request transfers from E2 and other dormitories, a textbook omen of imminent prison violence. In early January, according to later state police interrogations, inmates are widely discussing how to get added weapons into the institution from the prison industries building nearby on the reservation. These plans too are reported. Preparations and the official indifference to them are booming almost too blatant. Convicts, one wrote later, begin to wonder if the man was daring them to start something. I think I'm going to stop that chapter right there, right? We're going to discuss it a little bit. The words are really small, exceptionally small, and I wear glasses, and I'm not wearing them right now. But we're going to talk a little bit about this, right? And we'll get back to it. I promise we will definitely get back to this book. I think it's going to be an interesting book. The things that were going on in New Mexico State Prison, right? You got people telling them, look, things are about to happen. Some of them dudes are like, dude, I'm on a hit list that was passed around. Like, I need your help, man. But what are you going to do? Are you going to let this thing go down like this? Are you serious right now? And nobody's paying attention. And I'm going to relate that to what's going on now in this country, inside of all these prisons. I've been in prisons like FMC Lexington, where the ceiling was falling through. And one time these people are walking through to do an inspection from Washington, D.C., and they got this big old bag on the wall, on the ceiling where all the water's coming in. There's a hose running down it to the outside. And I look at the lady and I tell her, oh, that's in case we get thirsty. If you want a drink, just take a sip off the hose. And I remember the lady looking at me like, so I figure after I tell these people in D.C., like, hey, look, man, look at this shit, right? After they come see this, that they're going to do something at FMC Lexington. You know what they did? They did absolutely nothing. They did nothing. The bag was still there, the tarp full of water with a hose in it, draining out the window was still there when I left. The prison's falling apart. It's so hot in there you could hardly breathe at night. You know, we had these fans. Like, I had bought a fan. It's like $150. Big old fan, had it mounted on my wall. You know, I bought fans that were stolen from the teachers. It was just so hot, you couldn't make it, man. And I lived on this alley there called Crack Alley. Definitely a dangerous place, right? You got 350 prisoners, one cop, 3 floors, all different directions. You got people on top of people in what we would call the bus stops. And you know, this is like the boiling pot, I would say, right? It perpetuates violence, anger, hatred. And you heard what they said, and it was their chance to get back. You know, you got cops running around beating people up in New Mexico State Prison. But this shit's happening everywhere. It wasn't just happening back then. It's still happening. Cops are still beating the shit out of prisoners. I got a video from New York, man. You guys want to watch it? They kill the dude. They beat on him and they kill him. New York State Prison is not a place for the faint-hearted, man. The cops over there got sticks. They will beat you to death. I was there. We'll do a video on that too maybe this week. I don't know if I can show him actually dying on the video because of YouTube, but we could definitely do that video. But that's what's going on all over the country, man. People are being oppressed. And some people might be watching this video because we always get these comments where, well, you shouldn't do the crime if you didn't want to do the time, or, you know, just nonsense, man. You deserve it. Did you think about the people you were robbing? Probably not. Because if people were thinking about the people they were robbing when they were out in the street, they probably wouldn't have been robbing, right? But I am a firm believer that people are better than their worst mistake, right? Their worst lapse in judgment. People make lapses in judgment. Sometimes people make irrational, irresponsible choices, man. And it leads to prison. But like I always say, the punishment comes from the court. It doesn't come from the cops. It doesn't come from the prison administration. I mean, there's people being oppressed all over, and they think they're slick, man. The wardens and the security staff, they think they're slick right now. And I'm going to say something that a lieutenant told me, right, in Raybrook. Lieutenant St. Louis. He might be watching. He said, "You think I don't know that if you guys didn't want us to control this prison that we wouldn't?" He said, "It's a mind fuck game." He told me that. Because think about it. You got 700 prisoners and 100 staff. What would happen if all the prisoners did rebel, right? And I don't promote this anywhere. But I'm telling you that it's boiling. It's boiling everywhere. Go on Facebook, man. Check out some of these prison riots. A dude sent me something on Instagram yesterday. It was moo. Thank you, man. I mean, it was just one of the worst prison videos I ever seen, man. Where they just stabbed the hell out of this dude, knife sticking out of his head. The other dude's in his cell. I think there's 3 dudes in the cell. One of them's dead. There's blood all over this dude, and he's just screaming. He can't get out of the cell. He wants to get out, man. And he can't get out. And, the problem is, these staff members and these prison administrators, they need to start thinking about incentives, man. Start thinking about what you can do to help people, right? What you can do to motivate people to do the right thing, to stop doing the shit that they're doing. Because if they're committing violence against each other like that, how long will it be before they decide that we're going to come together and we're going to do it this way? We're going to do what they did in Attica. We're going to do what they did in New Mexico. There might be an AW watching this right now. There might be a warden watching this. You know what? You probably should watch it. You should probably think about this stuff. And I understand your position, that you can't let the inmates take over. You got to let them know who's boss. But you don't have to do it with nuts and bolts, man. You can do it with respect, right? Men respect men. I always respected the officers that always stayed the same and didn't change up. We're going to get back into this New Mexico butcher shop because it's truly a butcher shop. It's not a game. It was not a game. People were burned with blow torches, the same torches that they left just laying around. It's incompetence, but why is there so much incompetence? Think about the escapes from Clinton Correctional Facility in New York. There's incompetence because, in general, these people that run these prisons and work in these prisons, they're lazy. Maybe they should be getting more pay for the job that they're doing. Maybe they should stop creating such a dangerous environment. I don't know. Reduce the violence. Give people incentives to get out of prison, man. Some of these prisons give out fried chicken from Kentucky Fried Chicken and pizzas. That's all good. But give people real incentives to earn their way out of prison through education, character education, and see if things change. I'm willing to bet the house on it, man. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Blood on the Razor Wire TV. We will be back at you tomorrow. Who knows? Maybe tonight. Hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. And don't forget, make sure you leave a comment. I hope you liked it. With respect, until tomorrow, we're out.